everybody. Welcome back to Mind Your Nest. I'm your host, Jennifer Rosen. I can't even say how meaningful and excited I am to have this next guest in studio. It wasn't a straight line. Took a minute or two, but I just can't wait for this conversation. So without further ado, everybody say hi to Chelsea Williams.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm equally excited.
Thank you for being here. So I'm going to tell you the story about how I found out about Chelsea Williams. As everybody knows, I moved to Delray Beach about 2.5 years ago from Chicago, and I started working, doing some bookkeeping, working for an accountant part-time, and then I started working at a company called Graco Automotive Group in Delray Beach off of Federal Highway. And I don't know, like maybe a couple 100 feet down the street from Graco was a great juice place called Planet Juice. I loved it. One of the guys, Ryan, would always punch my card twice. And so I was always disappointed when he wasn't working because I really thought, oh, aren't you guys all going to give me 2 punches on my punch card? They have fantastic juices, smoothies, wraps, and all this stuff. I noticed they had this protein bar called Fro Pro. And I'm like, these are cute little bars, and they come in great colors. So long story short, I would go back to this place on a somewhat regular occasion. And then I started following them. And through that, I started following an organization called Next Level Recovery. Through that, I connected with Jeremy Plummer, who, if you've been following along with my podcast, you'll know that I had Jeremy on for a part 1 and part 2. After having Jeremy on, he suggested I reach out to Chelsea, and I did. So here she is, and she's going to tell her story.
Thank you. If I had to pick one person to speak highly of me, Jeremy is definitely one of them. That connection doesn't surprise me whatsoever. I'm grateful for that. I'm Chelsea Williams, the CEO of Fro Pro. My husband, Matt, and I own the company together. He founded it, and all of my podcasts have been with him, and he's always been like, you should do one, and people have asked, and I've said no, and this one just felt right, so I said yes. Here I am today, grateful to share my part alone. The bar was founded by Matt, but by no means was it intended to be a business. He created it while getting sober. He just celebrated 14 years in May of this year.
Fantastic.
The way Matt and I met 3 weeks before his sobriety date. He was a teacher here in Boca. I had grown up here my whole life, so I was babysitting, and he was a teacher at a local school, and the kids that I babysat for were in his class. We met on the carpool line. He was cute Mr. Williams, and he asked me out for a drink, and I was young. I was 22. We had gone out for a drink, dated for 3 weeks, and I just really liked him. He had gotten a DUI on the way to my house. I picked him up from jail the next day, and we'll get into it more later, I'm sure, but we've been together ever since. That journey started in 2010. And then by 2011, he had been just trying to figure it out. Odd jobs, getting healthy, getting into fitness, and created Fro Pro. Someone suggested that he name it and make it into a business. So he did, and everyone supported him and loved him. It was a hobby for a long time. I jumped in 2016 and made it a business. That's the story of how it started. So that's what we do now, and Matt just really supports me while I lead our team.
It's amazing. I like you a lot already from your story. It says something really beautiful and extraordinary about you from the moment you met Matt until today. I mean, really, you're a very special human being. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about with that. Couple of things. Had you ever had any connection or interaction with the recovery community or known anything about that your whole life growing up? You were very young.
Yeah. When you look back in life, things happen, right? Like I had a friend who had a mom that was suffering. She drank, and I didn't know anything more, but my life did not have any connection to it. I am a caretaker, so taking care of him and supporting him was the first thing. The biggest thing for us is what I explained. He would go to meetings and I would drive him. Instead of waiting outside, I would sit in the meetings. So I went to a lot of meetings with him and I learned a lot. It's crazy how much time has passed. You separate and it's just like such a long time ago. If I really think about it, I learned so much. I sat in those meetings and just supported him. I think the biggest thing was that he told me that I shouldn't stay in this relationship. He said, you do not want to be with me. This is not what you signed up for. So we had agreed that I understood that his sobriety had to come first. It was just not a question. I knew I was going to support it and learn. And then life just happens, and here we are. There's just been so many different phases of his sobriety and how much he's grown. I think back to him having a couple years and just being so impressed by him. And now 14 years in, even more, I just learned so much. So it's been easy for me to support him.
How old you were when you first met him? Were you living at home?
Yeah, I was living with my mom.
Wow.
So when he got the DUI that night, I was living at home and he called. I remember him sounding super drunk when I was embarrassed and I hung up and I went to my mom. I'm like, he's coming over. I just don't judge him. And she's like, you hung up? Like he's drinking and driving? And it had happened so close to my house. My mom went to the scene. I was too upset. She had driven over to the scene. She called. They're definitely going to arrest him. I called the phone the whole night. And people who know Matt personally and have called and gotten his voicemail, it's the same voicemail. And it says at the end, have a most triumphant day. Thinking back to him being in active use, I just heard it over and over. It just went straight to voicemail. Now everyone says have a most triumphant day to him because that's what his voicemail was. At first, my mom, tattoos, not Jewish, going to jail, drinking. It was very, what are you doing? She's his biggest supporter today, to the point where it's embarrassing. If you look at her Facebook, she's just his biggest supporter. But at the beginning, here's her 22-year-old daughter picking this guy up from jail and not wanting her to go through that.
Do you have any siblings?
A twin brother.
Is he in Florida?
Yeah.
And are you close? Did that have any impact, your relationship with Matt in the beginning with your relationship with your brother?
It's tough.
Yeah. Still?
Yeah.
I find it fascinating. You have a heart. I said to you before we started chatting, like you and Matt, really, do you have to be this pretty and good looking? It's really so unfair. What was it that you were just all in from the jump?
I've thought about it over the years that what made me was the thought of losing him. It was the pain of what he was going through and caring about him so much. He did this once. He obviously tells his own story where he went to some meetings because he's gotten DUIs before. But this was the first time he said, I was an alcoholic and that I'm going to give this a shot. I'm really fortunate. He said he was doing it and went all in. So to me, it's really easy to support someone who does that. I'm lucky. Other people go through constant relapses or not all in or not listening. The bar is very high in our house.
I understand that. As we briefly talked, I told you that it's been 21 years. October 29th was 21 years that I've been on my own, raising my kids as a single full-time working mom. I left Jay very early on in our marriage. We met, got married, we had Noah, moved, we had Rachel, and then I was done. I knew he was an addict before we got married, drinking, drugs, and gambling. I thought, nice Jewish girl, meets nice Jewish boy, let's get married. The only person I told was my dad, was my person, the best boss and mentor I ever had. I'm the only girl. He was like it for me. We're very similar in personality, very simple. He's been gone for over 8 years. But just realists, not reactive, not hysterical, not catastrophizing things. And I truly trusted him. I was working with him and my younger brother at the time, and he was always a really great sounding board for me without judgment, always asking me what did I want to do about it. So I knew I had him with me in case I, God forbid, ever needed him. And so we knew what to do before Jay and I got married, which was fine. And as I said, I just wanted my dad to walk me down the aisle, and I never honestly thought that the opportunity would ever present itself again, which took me a very long time to say those words out loud, because that obviously says more about me and how I felt about myself than anything else. My Jewish mother thought I needed to get married and have babies and stay home and all those things, and never really understood anything about addiction. We were very fortunate in our family. Every family has their own dysfunction. I grew up in a very idyllic family, older, younger brother, a dog, both my parents. All we needed was the white picket fence. My dad got sick, and then my parents split up. After the age of 18, life changed a little bit for me. However, addiction was never part of my life. When I met Jay, it happened very quick. I got fixed up by not only his mother, but his mother's very dear friends after a chance meeting with my mom and I. We got fixed up, and our first date was January 20th. We got engaged August 4th, and then got married the following May 8th. And I just remember our first date. It's just a very warm guy. Laughed. You could tell that he had a huge heart. And I grew up in a family predominantly with males, older, younger brother. My dad, very strong, very independent. My brother's extraordinarily successful. Jay was different. He was warm, engaging. He had a great personality. He had a lot of friends. He just wanted to have a good life at the time. And I never really noticed or saw anything until I did. So I think it was a couple months before we got married, and we started going into therapy, and I had been to several meetings. What's interesting listening to you talk about your experience in those rooms. I wasn't afraid. I was very open, interested, and I wanted to understand. I did. He has been one of the best teachers. I've learned the most about addiction, recovery, relapse, and all of it from him. I credit him for helping me live the most honest and authentic life that I possibly can. I'm grateful for that, having been part of the recovery community for as long as I have been. I don't believe in having any regrets. I don't look back at my life and judge or criticize. I'm grateful because I think I was meant to live a different kind of life from the North Shore where I was raised. Everything was quote unquote perfect. You had to be a doctor. You had to be a lawyer. You had to live in this kind of house, drive this kind of car. It's a pretty tough crowd.
And I'm from the North Shore. I'm from Woodmere originally.
Yeah, I went to University of Maryland. So when I heard about I'm like, whoa, like this is not the North Shore of Chicago. They thought my dad drove a tractor and that I lived on a farm. I'm like, we live in Wilmette. They knew Highland Park and Los Angeles. And I'm like, there are other states in between New York and Los Angeles, right? But then also, I heard some really insane things. You're crazy. What are you doing with him? It's all a lie. He's going to ruin your life. I never believed that. He wasn't angry. I never really saw him in his addiction until I did. I never felt in danger. And I'm sure that there was part of me that just wanted to keep moving forward. And I'm sure somewhere even deeper was the reality that we were at some point not going to be living under the same roof, which has turned out to be just okay. When you first started on your path with Matt and you were in those rooms, what were some of your ups and downs in the beginning while you were on this path with Matt?
The difference for me with what you just shared was that I came from a place of a lot of openness and honesty and therapy growing up and had my own childhood trauma and things. So even though it wasn't addiction, it was just growing up really fast because of divorce and abandonment issues. So I was healing myself, right? So sitting there and supporting him was for both of us, right? I feel like we have such a strong marriage because we learned so much together and communication is so strong for us. Ups and downs really were never in the house with us. Ups and downs were the external things. And I say that not to be like everything's perfect, but the one thing we have is each other. I can't even think on the spot. It's not always been easy. Financially, we've both always had to work really hard without a safety net and just try to build this life we're both trying to plan for. As far as his recovery and me supporting it, I've just listened. I'm not in it. I honestly had to learn at the beginning that it wasn't my story to tell.
Right.
Like I was open and honest and talking all the time. I had to learn that there's anonymity. Like you can't share those things. And I learned that very quickly and respect that now, of course. And I would say that was the toughest part, just trying to support, but it wasn't my story to tell or my life that I was living. He was struggling. I'm not a big drinker at all, which made this easier than had I been. But on my 23rd birthday, I drank a lot and he struggled with that. He had to process it. There wasn't a fight, but he was figuring out what worked for him and me learning that too.
Have you had any of your relationships change or shift over the years since you met Matt?
Yes.
Can you talk about
Friendships,
that?
you mean?
Yeah. Or familial, or as you look at a tree and the branches and all the other people that you might have really had a strong connection and friendship with that are no longer there.
I've always struggled with relationships. Mm-hmm. Girlfriends have always been really hard for me. I'm not a girl's girl, and I don't say that proudly. We live in a world where you think you're supposed to have all these things. It's taken me 36 years to realize I don't have to have a group of girlfriends to feel complete. I don't feel comfortable in a lot of women relationships. My childhood trauma, my father left us and my parents got divorced. I had a lot of abandonment issues from that. At the same time, I had girlfriends. We were 11, right? So it's insignificant, but it was so impactful for me to have friends just not be there for me. It really shaped me the rest of my life. And I have always felt misunderstood in relationships. One thing and someone takes it the other way. So it's been hard. I committed myself fully to Matt and I was ashamed for it for a while. Our whole life revolved around him and his recovery. It took me a very long time to find my own way. 2 years ago, 2022, I went to the Hoffman process. I don't know if you've heard of it.
What is it?
It's an intensive treatment for a week. I guess it's more of a retreat, but it's intense therapy. You don't have your phone. You check in for a week, and it took me a long time to get there. When I had left, or right before you leave, you share what the biggest thing was. I immediately shared with my class that this was the first time in my whole life that I had done something just for me. I had devoted the last 12 years supporting this group of people. Everyone is in recovery. Everyone is sober, and they're all like-minded people. I was not one of them.
Correct.
So my whole life is supporting people in recovery, but I'm not like them. Mm-hmm. So there's always something that made me, I didn't feel not a part of because I don't want to be, it wasn't like a want. But for the first time, I was like, no, I need to go get help. I need to work on things for me. And this was for me. I wasn't in a meeting supporting someone else. It was really just for me. So yeah, I really feel confident today. That can always change. I just have a different path than what I thought you're supposed to be with the big group of girlfriends and all of that.
Oh my gosh, we have so many similarities. I'm even more grateful that you're sitting across from me. You're here to tell your story, which is extraordinarily provocative and uplifting. You have so much grit inside of you. Oh my gosh,
I just joked. These very close friends of ours, they're young. I used to babysit them. They're grown up. They just got engaged. And I joked. I said, not to make this about me,
right,
but look at this picture of you with us when we got engaged. But I specifically called that out. I've matured and I've learned how to communicate better. And when someone shares their story, I don't make it about me. There is space to try to relate so that someone feels seen and heard. But I'm constantly navigating that exact thing. We all have experiences to share, but you also have to make sure someone feels like, Matt and I always say, do you want to be heard? Do you just need me to listen right now? Sometimes we really have to lean into that and make sure the other person's getting what they need.
My dad taught me that too. He always said, try not to be the first person that speaks in a room. And it was this quiet acknowledgement that in some way, shape, or form, that I was somewhat less than and invisible to other people because of other people's perceptions or observations or critique or whatever that it was. And someone has said to me over the years, oh, you're just too sensitive, or that's not how it was, or definitely negated everything that I said and said that I had made everything up. And I was never one of those girls that shared my heart, frustrations, and sadness with my friends. I started seeing my first therapist when I was 13, and I've been in and out for many years with a couple different therapists who have helped me with my life. I just needed a sounding board that would here and focus on our relationship. Like you said, I was the person sitting across from the therapist and I was the focus. I remember when I went to my first therapist at the age of 13 and I was struggling with my weight. I'd been overweight many years. I would take big bags of plain and peanut M&Ms and I'd open them up on my yellow bedspread and I'd separate them by colors and this whole craziness. I would only eat the big peanut M&Ms. I thought they were better tasting. We had a custom-made soda fountain in our house. My dad had always wanted one. I would sit on the top of the soda fountain with a spoon and just eat right out of the 3-gallon thing of Haagen-Dazs chocolate chip, which was my dad's favorite flavor, and same with mine. And my mom would walk in the door, and she's, oh, my God, like, how about some carrots and celery? And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good. So that was really one of the things that brought me to the therapist for the first time. When I walked in to see Evie, I just loved her. She was severely overweight. Because at that age, I didn't want to make her feel bad. And highlight my issue because I thought that somehow it was going to insult or put her off in treating me. I had other things to talk about, and so I did. It was at that point that I realized that I would much rather free myself from things that were going on with me personally than with friends. And maybe at times my dad. Everybody comes from a different place. We all come from a different home life. And while I said that I thought my upbringing was pretty idyllic, there were definitely traumas that I have over the past couple of years definitely freed myself with the people that I felt were the ones that were really standing in extraordinarily negative judgment of me and my decisions, one of which was marrying Jay. Not many people until you meet those people, have a lot of honest conversations about addiction and mental illness. My ex-husband came from a few generations of both. I knew early on that nobody wants to be an addict. Nobody wakes up one day and says, today's the day that I'm going to start ruining my life. It's rooted in something deeper than that. In my case, with my ex-husband, it was. I had a grandfather that was an abusive alcoholic until 10 years before he passed and he got sober. He had a paranoid schizophrenic as a cousin. It was highly likely that he was going to continue in those shoes. Obviously, genetics have a role, but it's also your environment. And I do think that his environment was accelerated, maybe his turning the corner into addiction. He also had a lot of pain and suffering behind that. One of the very first things that I knew for sure was that it was not my story to tell. I think coming from a family of accountants and an attorney and being in professional services myself with people's private information, confidentiality is really one of the most important tenets you could have in your life. If you want somebody to just hold that information. When I first knew that Jay was an addict, I automatically felt like my body shifting. I knew there was this invisible wall that I had to put around me to protect myself. Yeah. I could definitely feel it, that I was on this side by myself on an island and everybody else was on the other side. And life was going on with them swimmingly in their bubblegums and rainbow world, while mine wasn't crumbling at that time because of where Jay was at in our marriage and our relationship. I just had a sense it was going to go over the bridge. I felt like I was living in two alternative universes. And I felt more connected to the universe of people in recovery and the family members in recovery and the stories that I couldn't imagine ever living in or with. I'm grateful for my story. I'm grateful for Jay's story. I just sat there listening to everybody else's story.
I was just so proud. That's how I would speak out about it until I figured I had to listen and wait for him. It's interesting because we had spoken about how I just got back from New York because Matt just ran the New York City Marathon.
Mazel tov, which is fantastic.
Yes. And 8 years ago, he had ran it for the first time. So we had an opportunity beforehand to be a part of this competition where they record a commercial with Asics and Foot Locker, and we were nominated and filmed it, and it was about Matt's story. Not just a running story. Why do you run? The other two finalists had their own story. But Matt's was about his recovery, and we had to think about it because if you win, it would air nationally on ESPN. And we did it. And then he won, of course. So he had won it, and it was going to air nationally. We, at the time, were building Fro Pro. I had just left my day-to-day job and said, I'm going to make this a business.
What were you doing before that?
So I was working for a jewelry designer.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, locally. My strength is running stuff, right? If you have a problem, I can solve it. If there's a project, I can organize it. So you could put me in any business. But fortunately, jewelry was obviously super fun and not good for my shopping addiction. I was in jewelry and ready to help Matt and take what I had learned. In 2016, that's what we were doing. So we were heading in a direction where we're like, this is a business. We're going to create a business. You're in recovery. You're now going to openly share. His mom had not openly shared. It was just a big deal in every way. I felt really strongly like I was the one that said, absolutely. I've never been ashamed of it, obviously. And I'd been speaking about it always. And I thought it would be really helpful to have a purpose for our business. At the time, I think people had advised us like, oh, like child obesity or like hunger, all these things that you could take a food business and support.
Right.
But our whole life revolved around Matt's recovery. So it was just authentic and organic to share, but it shared it on a huge platform. And we had said if it helps one person, this is all worth it. We fortunately have our one person, but I think there's been many more.
I'm sure.
8 years ago this week was his first time where he opened. And since then, everything has revolved around that. Fro Pro is a delicious snack bar. It's an organic peanut butter snack.
And it has the colors.
It's super fun.
Yeah.
It's just a snack that really is delicious. But the reason it's not just a snack is that we hope to grow this company so that we can share Matt's experience, strength, and hope and help people in recovery. We employ young men and women. We have 2 guys right now that are working for us full time that are just got 1 year in recovery. And like, we're just so proud of them. It's amazing to give them a safe place to work.
Yes.
and people who understand. And, you know, if they have needs and wants that they need to support that, obviously we do. So that's really the goal of Fro Pro. Like, it's delicious, but CPG, the business is so hard. Grocery is so hard. And then really cool things happen. And we're like, this is why we're doing it. It's not the big PO that we get for a huge order. It's like when someone reaches out and says that they found out about our story and that they love it, that is what drives us. And then there's that fine line of selling Matt's story, which we never do, but I'm just like conscious of it. And yeah, like it's been 8 years. He just ran the marathon again, raising funds for people in recovery on an open platform. There's just no shame, but we respect anyone who keeps it private for sure.
I was well aware of that in the beginning when I learned of what Jay was going through. I do appreciate the anonymity that goes along with being in those rooms. I've seen many people that I know, parents, siblings, or whatever, in those rooms. So I understand that. And while I understood and still respect, obviously it's Jay's story to tell, I have learned over the years that, like you, that I have my own experience and story as it relates to what I've learned from being in that community for so many years. When my son got into trouble, I took my experience and perspective in a different direction. I've always said being the spouse and then ex-wife is much different than being the mother of somebody suffering from addiction. One isn't more or less tragic than the other. They're equally an intense experience because it'll take you all the way to the studs. You feel like your life is completely disintegrating in front of you. While you do have the tools, at least for me, because I'm very good in a crisis, I table my emotions and I get down to business, just as you described. But that loss of control and that somebody's suffering is something that you are not going to be the one to really navigate. They have to do the work. They have to make a decision. They have to look in the mirror and say, I'm ready.
Yeah, which is so hard as a parent. I'm not a parent myself, but everything changes when it's your own child.
Completely. And I've said numerous times over the years to my son, I can't want this more than you. I can't want you to be better. You have to want it more. You have to look in the mirror and say, am I ready? Am I done with this? You have two choices in life. I think that giving people 8 and 10 and 11 and 37 choices is ridiculous. Like you either go left or you go right. Which one is it?
We're black and white. We experience the gray in our highs and lows. We don't do gray.
Yeah. There's enough and part of my life that I do gray. But for this and for the devastation and the hope, strength, hope, and what was the other word?
Experience, strength, and hope.
Thank you. Which she still says to this day. It's like a non-negotiable, because if you make it negotiable, then you know what's going to happen. I would definitely say that my experience with Jay and his recovery really set the table for me being able to make it through when our son was struggling. It's not something you get over. I always love when people say, he's recovered, right? I'm like, yeah, no, there's no such thing as being recovered. You're always in recovery, or you're in your addiction. When you talk to people that have never had firsthand experience with addiction or knowing somebody in addiction, people think that you're talking a different language. Or that like I've been possessed because now I speak in different terms. However, as I'm sure you can relate, the experience of really having such a close connection with the recovery community, you need to pick up those nuances in that language. If you want to be healthy in helping yourself, which means helping your spouse, child, or family get through the highs and lows of what addiction and recovery does to a family.
Everyone can benefit from a program. Everyone can benefit from working a program. And that's what I attribute all of our success to, being guided by him from day one, working with him and his program.
Some of the things that I learned from Jay and believe to be very true to this exact moment is let it go and move on, one day at a time. Thinking about yesterday causes depression. Thinking about tomorrow causes anxiety. So just live in today.
The biggest one for me in the past year, and this isn't sobriety based, was it Brene Brown, who I love. She said, let them. Like that's been the biggest thing because you just have to let them do them. And whoever they are, Matt and I are very emotional, sensitive beings that are affected by those around us. And that has been... Talk about lows, those experiences outside of us have brought us down, and you just have to let them and stay focused on what we're doing and who we're about. Behind closed doors for us is all that matters.
I agree. Last year was an extraordinarily traumatic time in our family. From what we thought we understood about Jay being in recovery turned out not to be true. He had relapsed. And then we were back and forth to California, and during that time he attempted suicide, which was, I can't even describe in words what all of those feelings were when this was happening, specifically for our children, and obviously for him as well. So we were back and forth to California multiple times. I went by myself the last time when he was about to get discharged. I'm very good in a crisis, so I tabled the emotions and just booked the flights. We flew out there, we flew back. My son was unbelievable, and being on the phone with his insurance company to find a place for him to go. And while I had always known this, when you're in a crisis and need the system to help you, it's paralyzing because at times you feel defeated that the system, and then the reality that the system doesn't really care about you. The system doesn't care about you and your family. We've been fortunate enough to have enough interaction with programs specific to addiction and recovery. However, when you need the greater system, when you're in a crisis, at least for us, it felt much different. It would have been better if, let's say, my son had cancer, because then it would be easier. People are like, oh, okay, I get it. Come right in. I've always believed, especially with my relationship with my ex-husband, that for the most part, everybody just wants to matter and be loved. It's really scary to be at that place emotionally and psychologically where you think that the answer is the final answer. Did you ever have that experience, or did Matt ever have that feeling to your understanding?
It's interesting how we said we wouldn't make it about us. My father committed suicide and died. Here I am sitting completely understanding we did not have a relationship, so I can't speak to emotion around there other than there's nothing sadder than successful suicide. Like even me having hatred towards him and what he had done, a person to get to that level and place to do that is like there's nothing more sad, right? Matt has had suicidal thoughts prior to getting sober, never since.
Thank goodness.
I think he'll openly admit that he doesn't think he'd ever, I don't want to put the words in his mouth. Of course, he's gotten to a place where life would be easier if he wasn't here. I deal with depression. Luckily, it's different now. When we met, I had been on antidepressants for 10 years. Him and I can both relate. It'd be easier, but not to the worrisome of suicidal thoughts. I think it's only human to want to give up. I just think there's different stages of that. I don't want to take the experience away from such craziness, but yeah, I have some experience with it for sure.
Growing up, being Jewish and growing up where I did, there was such repulsion towards people that committed suicide, especially maybe in the Jewish community. Stigma, whatever you want to call it. I believe for some people, obviously I can only speak to the two people that I know personally. I always caution when I hear people say everybody or nobody or some of the people. How do you know? Just speak from your personal experience. I have a much different take on that because somebody, like you just said, has to be in so much pain that they just want the pain to go away. I don't view that as selfless or selfish. It just is. We all get to decide when our own mind and body, if they've hit the wall and that's their limit, then that's their limit. I'm grateful that never came to fruition thus far. I do suffer from depression. For a long time, I thought it was actually more anxiety than depression.
Yeah, it's hard. We're working hard on breaking that stigma. It's hard for me to relate to it because it just doesn't exist within me. And then in my inner circle, it doesn't exist, but it's out there. So that's what we're constantly trying to fight.
I will say that living in Florida, especially.
It's definitely different in our community, which is very rampant. There's a lot of recovery here in Delray and Boca.
And I've worked with a lot of people in recovery because whether you suffer from a medical condition or some other ailment, we're just humans. Everybody deserves to be looked at in the eye, say hello, smile, have a giggle, find out a little bit more about you, and not so much about what some people say they want to find a cause for it, because it would help some people that don't have any direct knowledge of what it must be to be an addict. They feel like, well, if I knew the reason, then I can understand. But some people can't. They just say, this is what happened. And that's hard for them. If you suffer from cancer or some other medical ailment where you can trace it back genetically, I was pretty cynical when Jay got into early recovery. I was like, there's no way this is genetic. It was like a choice.
Yeah. Everyone's different. My story is different in the sense where I was not a victim of Matt's alcoholism, and my story is fully in support of successful, continuous sobriety so far. Watching others come in and out and others not do it well or others do it successfully. Just my observation of it all, and then just bringing it back to Matt and I and how lucky I am. He makes it look easy. Obviously, it's not.
Right.
But that's why I'm so grateful.
I think one of the most important rooms that I was ever in was when my son was in a program in California. There was a family immersion weekend that we flew out there for. And we sat in this very large circle with the families and then our addicts. Going around the room, everybody had an opportunity to talk. As I said before, I've never wanted to have anyone else's problems but my own. That was especially true during that family weekend. Listening to the addict and then the parents. Some families had multiple addicts in the house, and seeing that perseverance in the family members, the line they had drawn with their addict family member and their non-negotiables in that relationship. And I remember thinking, people would talk about tough love, and my son was never the right candidate for that tough love. We had tried in probably our own unsuccessful ways. And I remember feeling so sad for the parents' addict when they said, you cannot come back to this house. we will not allow you to live in this house. You're done. You're gone. And understanding and accepting one family member's way of dealing with it compared to ours. I always felt that if we were to have done that with our son, that he would take the final turn of his life until we decided to do the tough love.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still here. And there was an acceptance in him at that time, maybe because he was older, that we said, we will always support recovery. We will always support you. He had other ideas, and we're like, I just remember the first time I said that. I'm sorry, we're not going to step on your dreams. And thankfully, that was my ex-husband's sentence that I ingrained in my brain at the time, because I didn't feel like I had the strength to say that. Go ahead, we wish you luck. We don't want to step on your dreams, but we will always support recovery, because sometimes you never know what your words are going to do to somebody who is suffering and not in their right minds when they're trying to make a decision. Have you noticed over the years, as you briefly talked about, your old relationships or your relationships when you first met Matt, as well as the past 14 years, in who stayed along for the ride with you?
Nothing with recovery.
Yeah.
I don't have anything deep there. Nothing because of recovery has changed whatsoever. I'd say everything that's changed is just life. Matt and I are different. We don't have kids. We're building a protein bar business. Everything's changing all the time. We have a lot of freedoms. We work together. Other couples don't. We just have all these different things. I'm assuming you're asking because of recovery and alcoholism, but no, I can't stress enough how my story is its own. I just support Matt's recovery versus living in this change because of it. Right. Everyone has stepped up to the plate and supported Matt, and recovery is just a part of who he is. He's never been a victim of it.
I agree with you. The recovery community became a part of my life many years ago. And maybe the things I've learned along the way from him and through the program and through my own people that I've met in those rooms have really helped me really have the most real perspective on life and myself and the reality of struggles and overcoming. So I don't know if I meant it in that regard. I just meant how you have lived your life for the past 14 years. Because I agree. Jay always would say, and I've learned enough, that my recovery is my recovery. Never question my program. Focus on your life, not mine. Because in the beginning, you feel like it should be your focus, the other person's recovery, the other person's struggle, the other person's addiction. I guess until you get into those rooms and then you realize, wait a minute, that's none of my business.
I feel differently. I don't know if I have a direct answer. I feel like we just grew up together, figuring our shit out. He was working on his recovery. I was working on every part of me that was dealing with anxiety, depression, stress, and figuring out who I am. Relationships are just so sacred to me. I either trust you or I don't. I keep my circle small. I get a lot of love out of my team and office at work. I have a few friends outside of it. I navigate my family life. And then I have Matt, who's truly my best friend. It's so cheesy.
I love that.
Matt is, we say to each other, we're all each other has, and that all that matters is what we both think of each other, and nothing else matters. I've become a better version of myself in my mind consistently in the last 15 years and learned a lot. We look back at times and they were so hard and they were nothing, right? We had a mattress on the floor. We wanted so much more. And I'm like, wow, how simple would it be to just go back to that? Yeah, no regrets. Like you said at the beginning, our life is what it is from all of our experiences. I hope that every time something happens, I learn from it, grow, and try to move past it and not overthink it and get stuck in it.
I completely agree. I feel just lighter over all these years. Obviously, it wasn't as light in the beginning, but it has definitely been more illuminated probably in the past 10 to 20 years since my kids were born. The reality and the wanting for living a simple life. Food, shelter, clothing, some friends.
I know what matters.
Those are really the simple things, and I'm really grateful for it. I believe it's helped me continue to move on in life and live a life well lived, which I think is one of the most important things you could do. Every day, try to make every day as good as you can. And if you want that day to be on your couch in your pajamas, binge watching Netflix, then that's okay too. You don't always have to solve your own problems each day. Chelsea, I want to thank you. I know this was a hard turn to close out the show, but I'm really grateful to know you and Fro Pro. Thank you for being so honest.
Thank you for sharing with me.
Okay, everybody. You know what I'm going to say. I hope you all have a great day, and don't forget to mind your nest.